into a specific topic, with everyone else kind of transitioning into a more of a fat loss phase. I think this would be helpful because there's a lot of tips that it's almost impossible to tell everyone all the different tips that you can use with fat loss. Otherwise, it would take you all day. But if I use this presentation now to actually dive deeper into each of these little hacks, that will hopefully help every one of you. I also want you to pitch in at the end because I'm sure there will be things that I've left out that some of you will probably do. So yeah, anything I've left out, and I'm sure I've left stuff out as well, just because I was trying to cover as many as I could. But anything that you think is worth mentioning, either mention it throughout, cut me off anytime. Like, this isn't one of those things where you have to like sit down and listen. If you want to literally just pitch in, stop me, ask a question, please do. So everyone good with that?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Right, fat loss secrets. So as we know, the basics, right? Calorie deficit. So if you can see that there, the first law of thermodynamics: energy cannot be created or destroyed. So it is literally energy in versus energy out. That is the most important thing. A lot of people still argue with different diets and stuff like that. The reason why I put that in, because people talk about keto, they talk about Atkins, all that sort of stuff. It always comes down to this equation here, and this is it further broken down. Now, we've done a team talk on this. I'm sure a lot of you in here have actually seen that team talk, where we dive deep into how to work out your maintenance calories and break down every single part of what goes in and what comes out. So I'm not going to dive into them because it's a full-on presentation in itself. So that's just the basics covered there. Now, time management again. I know we literally done this presentation, I think it was 2 weeks ago. I think it was the first one we kicked off with in the new year. So again, I wanted to mention that because that is something that we can do to optimize the fat loss. The reason why I've put that in is because it is about structuring your meals, planning them in advance, making sure you've got the time available where you know you can go shopping. Like, it's little things like this that people don't think about, especially when planning your week. If you're extremely busy, you know, you've got to factor in training. So you've got to find out when you can actually go to the shops, when you can prep the meals, how many meals you're going to prep. I know this sounds stupid, but if you don't think of it, you're gonna really find like you're always kind of tripping over your own feet. You're always chasing something rather than actually being prepared. And this goes for anything in life. You know, time management. This team talk is worth watching because it will give you some good sort of protocols for planning your time more efficiently with regards to family, work, life, everything. So that's worth watching as well. Now, moving on to more of the tips, right? Now, this is specific with coaching. If you've not got a coach, now obviously you all have, but if you haven't got a coach and you decide to do a fat loss phase on your own in future, then communicating with yourself or having some form of accountability is absolutely key. This is why we do what we do. So communication is vital for success when it comes to fat loss. This includes communication with your coach, yourself, planning ahead, and having a plan and sticking to it will increase your chances of success. Of course, we know that. These are basic again, right? It's not all going to be this basic. There are going to be some nice little tips in there. But the reason why the communication is so important, I'll give you some examples of working with people. When they literally will say to you, oh, they'll get to the end of the week, they'll get to their check-in and they'll say, oh, I miss this meal every day, or I struggle to eat this amount every day. And these are the little things that if you just tell us at the time, we can literally fix it straight away, or we can put some changes in place that'll make it easier for you. Because like I said, it goes back to the initial calories in versus calories out. It's not about having specific meals at specific points of the day. It's literally about making sure that you have the calories when you need them and hit the totals by the end of the day. So again, that's the basics pretty much over with, right? So sleep, we're going to touch on sleep. So why sleep is important for you. Sleep is essential for your body to work, repair, and maintain healthy brain and physical function. Sleep is essential for recovery and hormones. The hormones is the one I want to touch on with fat loss. So a lack of sleep can directly impact leptin, ghrelin, insulin, and cortisol. Now, cortisol is something we'll touch on later with regards to stress. But leptin actually decreases if you have poor sleep. So this regulates appetite and energy expenditure. So what you'll find is that this will actually start to go a little bit further down. This is with poor sleep now, not with regards to fat loss. So ghrelin increases, so that stimulates appetite a little bit more. So you find the appetite actually starts to shoot up as well. So when you move into a fat loss phase, now these work in opposites pretty much. So as ghrelin increases, you will find that your appetite literally shoots through the roof. And that is why you're having that false sense of need in food. That's where people start to have cravings that they don't really need. So this is something to watch out for and just be aware of. So when you start feeling like you are extremely hungry, you don't want to give in to those signals, because they are happening for a reason. You're in a deficit. You're in a deficit of energy, meaning you need calories, but that process will take place by literally using the fat stores that you've got available. If you stop that from happening or prevent it from happening by giving into those cravings and eating food, then you are just making your life hard. You're making it impossible or slowing down the progress of losing fat. When you get those signals, you should actually be like, this is a good thing. This is exactly what I want to happen. Yes, it shouldn't be extreme, but towards the end of a dieting phase, when you are very low in body fat, as we all know, well, some of us know, especially when you get to that level, the hunger is extreme all the time, and it's uncomfortable at that point. But for most people, especially with most people's goals, they don't need to get to that point anyway. So it should be at the point where you feel it, you feel the hunger. Even when you finish a meal, you possibly could keep going. You could definitely keep eating, but you need to just be aware and be like, I'm feeling like this for a specific reason. So don't give in to it. Okay, so with sleep then, making sure we get enough, but also we touched on this again, and I feel like I'm saying this all the time, but we've done a full team talk on sleep because of how important it is. So that is on there. You've got access to every single one of these, the recordings going back, so you can go back and watch it. And we dive deep into not only the quantity of sleep that you need, but also the quality. But when we talk about how much hours you actually need, less than 6 is usually not seen as enough. A few days like this won't hurt, but over time, if this stays consistent, your mental and physical function will suffer and slow. How many of you have heard of the people that say they don't need 6 hours of sleep?
Yeah.
I'm one of them, right? But you do. Like the reality is you do. Like you can function without it, but you will be functioning suboptimally. Like that is just the truth. If you were to have between 6 to 8, I do believe that if you go over 8, you're actually in a worse position again. And there's actually a lot of studies coming out now showing that oversleeping can lead to increased rates of depression, which is mad, in our society, especially. How many people sit down all the time just watching TV, watching Netflix, just in that state constantly of just relaxed too much, and then they sleep too much, and then I feel like that just leads to a constant negative cycle. But anyway, that's my opinion, just to put that out there. I feel like 6 to 8 hours is perfect for most people, definitely in the optimal range. Like I said, you can't function off less than that, but you will not be functioning optimally. If we want to look at performance, which is what we dived into on this team talk on sleep, the more the better technically, providing that it's not going to negatively affect your ability to perform in the gym. What I mean by that is training when you're feeling tired isn't great. You need to be sharp, you need to be focused. So you don't want that affecting you, because sometimes if you're napping prior to training, I don't know if any of you have done that, but probably have. Has anyone had a nap prior to training? Is it just me? Okay. Well, yeah, I know. Literally, that was me on prep. I was falling asleep before training, but trying to train after that, you just want to go back to bed. So I definitely wouldn't do that. And that was even having MV pre and bloody pre-workouts as well. So yeah, getting enough sleep, getting enough recovery is key. We know that. So stress, absolutely love that word. Stress is one of the world's largest silent killers, as we know. But I won't. I was going to say a personal story then. It's a bit weird to say on here, but like my father basically had a heart attack from stress, because he worked his bollocks off pretty much, and it led to him having a heart attack. That was one of the only causes, and it was lack of sleep. It was just a highly stressful environment constantly every day, and in the end, that's what it does to you. So it is one of those like silent killers that you can't put the finger on it or point the finger on it every time, but it always seems to be present in people, so controlling that and learning to control that. We're going to bring out a team talk on stress itself, but we've got a few if you want to watch the sleep management team talk, there's a lot of tips on there with regards to meditation, what you do before bed, making sure you get enough recovery, making sure you're using supplements to your advantage, whether it's ashwagandha, any sort of sleep management subs, they will help. But more so, I think stress is all about dealing with thoughts. I don't think it's about using supplements or drugs or whatever it is to try and calm you down. I think it's learning your psychological state and how you deal with thoughts and processes more efficiently. Time management I find is one of the best things to deal with stress. I feel like the most stressful people are the ones with ambition to do something, but they don't act upon it. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it's the ones that want to do something but procrastinate that leads to more stress, I find. So when you've got loads of things to do but you don't know how to do it, or you don't feel like you have enough time to do it, that's what creates a stressful environment. Of course, there are other things like external stresses, which could be physical or anything like that, but ultimately stress is good in small doses, like when we're in the gym. I feel like a bit of mental stress is good as well, whether it's like testing yourself from an intellectual level. I can't even say the word, so I need more of that. And making sure that you are actually testing yourself both physically and mentally every day, but not to the point where it becomes negative and negatively affects you. And you can use variables to track this if you have got a watch, a health watch or anything like that. If you notice that your heart rate variability does start to go a little bit different or changes from what it normally is, that's an easy way to take account of it. Resting heart rate is another one. If you start to find your resting heart rate starts to increase, that's another way of realizing that you are becoming possibly more stressed. Blood pressure, another one. If you want to track these metrics, you can, and it's a good way of finding out how your body is coping with what you're currently doing. It's why the health market and those industries do make so much money, because it does actually work. Do you need it, or can you just be in tune with your body? Like, I like to think, as much as I push all the metrics and I do like all the data, especially when it comes to athletes and really making sure that someone's fine-tuned. With lifestyle people, I don't tend to push it as much, because I'm like, you can kind of just learn from questions that you ask yourself. So the reasons we've got all these check-in sheet questions is for us to paint a picture of what's going on in your life. And most of the time, just by answering those questions, you can find out where you are, what you need to scale back on, where the training's causing you a lot of stress, a lot of problems physically, fatigue, you need to cut back. So anyway, before going on too much of a tangent, stress is one of the things we need to take account of. Okay, for fat loss hacks, do not cut out your favorite foods. Now, there's two ways of doing this. Number one is by tracking macros, giving yourself the flexibility that you need. I'm going to kick someone now. Can you hear someone's mic? I'm going to move down. I don't know, is it? That's cool. There we go. Okay, so don't cut out your favorite foods. Make sure that you are including all of your favorite foods at least within the week or within 2 weeks, because otherwise you're going to start having all these cravings. And you are, once, like I said, once the hunger hormones start to go up and you start to feel like you are having more cravings, you will end up getting to the point where you are really tempted to binge. And I don't care how much self-control you've got, you just don't want to encourage that if you are having that. So an easy way to do this is, number one, you either let us know exactly what foods you love, we will factor them in for you. Number two, which I find is more beneficial going forward, is actually teaching you how to track macros. You can use our app now, the Nutrition Logger. It's still in the works, so there's still a few bugs that need fixing with it. But on the whole, it's starting to work really well now, where you can track the foods, very similar to MyFitnessPal, and make sure you hit your macros by the end of the day, and you can squeeze pretty much anything into there. I still like to use the 80-20 rule with that for reasons I'll talk about further down this slideshow. But by 80-20, I mean like 80% should be healthy foods, because you will feel more satisfied. You'll feel better generally. You probably feel you have more energy. But the 20% can come from unhealthy foods, or foods that you find that you are really craving. Usually they tend to be a little bit more processed foods, things that are maybe less calorie dense, or more calorie dense, sorry, and lower in volume. So it's not going to fill you up as much. It may actually, with sugar, make you have more cravings. So you got to be careful with when and where you decide to have these things, but there's no reason why you can't have it from a fat loss perspective. It's just making sure that everything else in play doesn't go off the charts so that you just lose your head. That's the main thing. That's why I think when we talk to people about fat loss, it's not so much about giving you the perfect plan. Like, we try our best with that, but it's psychological. That's the main thing with this. So the little chart here is just showing the maintenance level of calories where someone might be. The deficit, the ideal deficit, would be the green line. Now, with the free meal concept, we've talked about this properly as well. We've done a team talk on this. I said this again. What we do is we actually go lower throughout the week than the ideal sort of deficit, which will build up an allowance of calories. As you can see here, is creating an allowance. So this is all added up throughout the day, and then you've got this allowance then. So even if you're on a surplus on one day, you are still able to actually be in a deficit throughout the full week. So overall, your calories will be in a deficit. You'll probably be averaging around this green line, which is ideal. But like I said, throughout the week, you'll be a little bit lower than normal. Now, the argument is with an athlete, would you want to sacrifice 6 days of calories a little bit to reduce performance potentially just to have one sort of spike in calories? That's the argument, you know. With an athlete, personally, I'd rather them actually take advantage of more calories on the whole, and not have that big spike. But for a lifestyle client, they probably feel better seeing results happen faster over these couple of days, and then having a nice meal out, a nice bit of balance between life. And obviously you have a bit of weight gain because of water weight, eating foods that you don't usually eat, you know, stuff like that. So you'll see the weight go up, but it's not the fat that's being slammed on you. It's literally just the fact that different foods, different environments, potentially alcohol, and then you come back down to normal. So overall, the fat loss will be the same. It's just a question of lifestyle and performance, what matters more to you. Okay, so free meals, we always factor them in. Hydration. Now, hydration, I can't even talk to you about how important hydration is. One of the biggest habits that I can tell you, and it's the first thing we say to people when they join us, is making sure that first thing in the morning, they hydrate themselves before they have a coffee and before they have a meal. Coffee is going to dehydrate you further, as much as sometimes I'm guilty of just reaching for a coffee first thing in the morning. You need to have water with that at least. You know, even if it's a bit of squash with it, something like that, just have some water first thing in the morning. You will be surprised how you can wake up with like a rumbling belly, like hungry. And then as soon as you have a pint of water, that goes. It's not the fact that you're hungry. It can be mistaken for hunger. It's just the fact you're dehydrated. So most people, I'd say, would wake up dehydrated first thing in the morning, slightly. You know, you can tell by checking your pee if you want to. But you will see straight away that you probably do need definitely to top up on your water first thing. So that is what I would do. That's going to help you with hunger again. So with fat loss, that will help. Snacking. So low calorie foods, low calorie snacks, low calorie popcorn, low calorie ice cream, all stuff like that. Now, when you're flexible dieting and using macros, this is absolutely fine. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the 80-20 rule. If you want to go to the supermarkets and find out the fanciest low calorie snacks, there is nothing wrong with it. Literally nothing wrong with it. People have this worry that it's bad for you, or people will say that it's not great and they're making up for it in different ways. Trust me, when it comes down to fat loss, the main thing for you and the healthiest thing for you is not worrying about what little ingredients they're putting into these things to make it low calorie. The main thing for you right now with your goal being fat loss is actually taking the fat off. We can worry about your health later on and worry about actually making you healthy overall. I can promise you, if it's only making up 20 or 10% of your diet across the day, it will nowhere near be doing any sort of detriment to you compared to what you would have been doing if you weren't following any sort of plan at all. So when people try and go through a fat loss phase, they almost just try and go into this health kick of like dropping everything and being super, super healthy. We try and be more realistic with people and explain to them, especially if they're a lifestyle client, like making better choices on the whole and sticking to your calorie target is number one going to get you in shape because we're controlling body composition. But overall, you're going to feel healthier because compared to the choices you made prior, it's going to be so much better. So the reason I say snack on protein, be careful with this as well. If you're tempted to snack on just a grenade bar, a protein snack that's you know, a chocolate bar with protein, be careful with that, because only reach for that if you need the protein. Don't reach for that because you think it's healthier. It's not, right? It's actually sometimes more higher, is higher in calories compared to if you were to just eat a smaller chocolate bar that tastes nicer. And that's a mad concept as well. So this is why macro tracking, flexible dieting comes into it, because you don't want to confuse yourself with having these health foods if sometimes you can have a smaller portion of the thing you actually want, right? So that's something to think about. Now, the reason I actually said snack on protein, I'm trying to get there, is TEF. So the thermic effect of feeding. It's one of those things that we add into expenditure that we should take account of, but most people probably are unaware of it or don't take account of it. So essentially what this means is like I said, it's the thermic effect of feed. So the increase in metabolic rate following the ingestion of food. This usually left out most people's equations. However, it plays a big role, especially for those on high protein diets. What this essentially means is the calories is burned via the digestion process of the meal. For example, and this is with all protein sources, right? So take a chicken breast, for example. So for every 100 calories of the protein consumed, on average, 30% of those calories is utilized through the digestion process alone. Okay, so what that means is if you're consuming 100 calories, so it says on the packet, chicken breast, 100 calories in whatever it is, whatever portion it is, 30 of those calories will be utilized during the digestion of that thing itself. Now, this isn't the same for carbs and fats. It's something about 5%, I think, with carbs and fats. So if you were to have 100 calories from, say, peanut butter from a fat source, then you would actually be taking in 95 of those calories. Only 5 calories would be used to actually digest that. Whereas protein is large, it's 30%. So if you were to snack on protein, number one, larger in volume, lower in calories. I know it may not be as nice tasting as fat, but you're going to be more filled up. And you're not going to even use, you're only using 70% of those calories that are actually going to be used for other things apart from digestion. So it's a great thing to reach for if you are really desperate for a snack and you don't want to use your macros or a free meal or something like that, then I would reach for that. So does that make sense? Because that's a bit of a complicated one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
A little bit more in depth in terms of tricks, isn't it? Okay. Caffeine cheat codes. Now, this is one, again, like when we're talking about the goal, right? The goal is fat loss. So sometimes we will be doing things, for the most part, that aren't considered the most healthiest thing to do. Now, I'm not pushing you to do anything bad. It's not going to negatively affect your health, but it wouldn't be considered, if we were trying to optimize every single health metric. But who actually does that? Who lives like that, right? So when it comes to caffeine in the AM, like we don't actually recommend that you have it past 12 p.m. ideally, 2 p.m. the latest. And I know most of you are probably used to having caffeine beyond that point, but the reality is it has, I believe some studies have said it's like an 8-hour half-life. Some have said it's a 6-hour half-life. But the reality is that means that if you have literally like 500 milligrams of caffeine, that's 6 to 8 hours later, you're still going to have 250 milligrams left in your system. That means for the next 6 hours, it's going to slowly go down to 125. So through your sleep, you still got caffeine in your system. That's going to prevent you from really going into that deep sleep, that REM sleep that we need. That's the most essential part of sleep, the sleep cycle. So limiting caffeine intake beyond 12 p.m. is essential. Literally, I know that sounds extreme, but it is. But that doesn't mean we can't take advantage of it in the morning, from the moment you wake up. Number one, we know it's a stimulant, so I don't want to skip forward, but it's got a thermic effect. So it's going to increase your body temperature. You're going to burn more calories naturally. So it helps, number one, with performance. We know all those studies, so I'm not going to dive into that part on this. But we know it helps with performance, drastically improves performance and your accuracy and everything like that. Mental performance, we know that. I think it's with physical performance, you can handle more without it becoming tipping over the edge of becoming like suboptimal. But with mental performance, you need to have like a little bit less. I think the dose is only like 100 milligrams or something like that. So with obviously you've probably seen some pre-workouts where they literally have 250, 350 milligrams of caffeine in a scoop, and some people decide to double scoop it, but we won't call them out today. But no, with hunger, it suppresses your appetite, suppresses your hunger. So the way I like to structure some nutrition plans towards the end, so when someone is really low on calories, is we will actually remove carbs early on in the morning. So we'll save those calories for the rest of the day. We might keep fats low as well in the morning, and then we will rely on caffeine to keep you going through that part. Now, this is for the extremes when you are pushing for that final sort of body fat loss. If you're aiming for something, whether it's a competition or anything like that, with a lifestyle client, you rarely have to get to that point. But there's no reason why you can't use these sort of cheat codes as well. This is what people use. Pro bodybuilders do this sort of thing, where they literally will rely on caffeine in the morning with some protein feeds, and then when it gets towards the end of the day, they start actually having calories back from carbs and fats, and obviously the caffeine is taken out at that point. When it gets to the very, very extreme with some of these athletes and it becomes unhealthy, and it really does become unhealthy at that point, Sometimes they have to literally strip it back to just protein alone, and they are relying on caffeine throughout the whole day. And then obviously the sleep is messed up as well. But sometimes these athletes take it to the extreme, and I wouldn't recommend doing that at all. It's not going to be beneficial for you. And for everyone in this chat, your goals, you do not need to go to those extremes. So please do not be tempted by what I just said. We will make sure we do everything we can to get you where you want to be. Meal frequency. And I know I've already chucked a lot at you, but anyway, we'll keep going. Meal frequency. As much as we like to avoid the bodybuilding diets as much as possible, there is reasons why eating smaller meals more frequently has its benefits. Despite the lack of science to actually back it, smaller, more consistent feeds tend to work better to boost your metabolism, decrease hunger, peaks and troughs. Now, there's an argument, because when you look at fasting, right, because that's another benefit and a little hack with regards to dieting that you can do, because what you're doing then is you're cramming your calories into a smaller window. Now, the only sort of downside to that is if you have that small window of eating away from where you plan to sleep, try and sleep when you're hungry. It's hard, right? Just a little story about me when I was bodybuilding, when the calories were so low, I was like waking up in the night because I was so hungry that my body wouldn't let me actually sleep. So it was getting to that point. So you've got to make sure, number one, that you're fed well before bed, but not too close to bed. So you've got to literally give yourself about 90 to 120 minutes, ideally, would be your last feed prior to bed. So then you'd be satisfied going to bed without your digestive system still in play. It would just be in a good state then. But like I said, back to the fasting window. So if you are going to do the fasting approach, and obviously we're working together if we do decide to do that or utilize that potentially in the morning. I know some people do it because of work, because they don't have time to eat breakfast first thing in the morning. What I would do is I would just fast then until like maybe 10, 11 o'clock. At that point, then you need to have some sort of protein feed. So I would start eating at that point. Anything beyond that for muscle gain and performance is going to be negative. You're going to start to have a negative effect on performance. So you need to take all of these things into consideration when you're thinking about what your goal is. What would be more beneficial for you? That's what I would think about. Just gonna move that a little bit. Sorry. But yeah, so that's what I would think about, is what your goal is, make it specific to you, and whether the meal frequency would be more beneficial, because having smaller meals more often, number one, is more hassle. You've got to cook more meals, prep more meals. But I do find that it's better for satisfying hunger, because you've got meals coming more often. And I do definitely find, like we said, it can help keep your metabolism high rather than having just one big feed throughout the day or two big feeds throughout the day. So like I said, there isn't science behind that. There's not much science behind that at all. But working with more so like bodybuilders really, and seeing the results it has compared to the other approaches, you just tend to see the results a lot better. So yeah, I would try and be more of a balanced approach rather than just fasting, or like I said, just small fasting window in the morning is fine. Okay, so I'm gonna move this to the side so I can see that. Okay, healthy eating works, but not because it's healthy. Okay, so a bit of a weird one there, bit of a weird title, but I'll say it again. Healthy eating works, but not because it's healthy. So we've already explained the importance of calories. So why does healthy eating actually work better than calories from McDonald's? I spelled McDonald's wrong. Healthy foods are generally very high in volume, low in calories, compared to processed or pre-prepped meals, being denser in calories when you look at the concentration. Take a look at the veg, for example, compare the volume of it to a slice of cake. One will fill you up, the other won't touch the sides and will leave you wanting more. So this is just a clear example for you, right? I know we're making it extremely healthy with veg, and you're not just going to eat a bowl of broccoli. Hopefully no one's got to that point, or no one's tried that on their own. I hope not. Otherwise I will kick you from the group. But no, if you look at 100 grams of that, right? So we compare the quantities. So 100 grams, 34 calories roughly. And then you look at 100 grams of a slice of cake, it's between 400 to 500 calories. Now, how quickly can you eat a piece of cake? And 100 grams, by the way, of a cake is not much at all. So it's very, very easy to actually do that. And number one, the sugar in that will make you want more. It's very moreish, and it will not satisfy you in terms of hunger at all. Literally not at all. So the hunger will be high, the cravings will be high. It'll cause a spike in your blood sugars. Insulin will then spike. and then you'll have a big crash. So we all know about that, right? So that's not good. That's not ideal. So what do we want to do? Why is eating healthy? Why does that work compared to actually just eating what we want with regards to flexible diet and the macros? The reason it's more successful is, number one, obviously when we dive deeper into micronutrients, we know how much value that provides us. So we are technically healthy overall. We're getting what we need. We're getting all the nutrients we need. But more so, it's filling you up. It's making you feel satisfied. You feel more energetic. You just feel better overall because you're getting what you need and you're not feeling hungry, you know? So like I said, if you go with the 80-20 approach and you make sure that for the majority of it, you are feeling satisfied, you're getting all of your micronutrients in, you're getting all your targets ticked off. You can use the little things like if you want a little slice of cake, a little piece of cake, as long as you've made room for it with regards to the macro targets, you can do that and it will not negatively affect you. So I think that's it. Yeah. Do you have any questions or did you like that?
That's good, man.
Is there anything, because I'm sure there is there anything you do that helps you with a dieting phase or a fat loss phase that I haven't mentioned? Because I know there will be something I haven't mentioned.
Loads of water, probably. Loads of water.
Yeah.
I probably have about 5-6 liters a day, easy.
Is it that much?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Coffee.
Just from coffee alone, that.
Well, no, and maybe a bit of MVP, but you never know. Yeah, my sleep isn't the best either, but I find it hard to get 7 hours in because I'm training first thing in the morning and I'm up at like 4:30 and I've got stuff to do after work in the night.
Yeah.
So I find sleeping a bit difficult, but I think it's just a case of just getting on with it, to be honest with
you. What I would say to someone like yourself, like when you are struggling with quantity, it's just about maximizing the quality that you get.
Yeah, I started trying to do that now. Like the blue light blockers.
Yeah.
I would go for a walk after, at my evening meal, because my evening meal is quite close to my bedtime. I try to get a walk in after food, maybe like half hour, 40 minutes walk in, or just somebody go, just to get the food shifted a bit.
Yeah, 100%.
I find that helps my sleep.
There's a lot of things we put on the sleep team talk as well that will help because it will help increase the quantity, like the quality of the sleep. A couple of things we talked about was that you can look at someone that sleeps like 10 hours, right? And their quality could be very poor and it makes them feel like they feel worse than when you do if you sleep 6 hours, but you're having a lot of quality. Ultimately, it does come down to the REM sleep, the REM, and making sure that you're in that deep sleep state. It's the last three phases, the last phase 3 and 4 of the sleep cycle. If you can just get in that most of the time, then you are going to feel completely fine off 6 hours sleep.
Do you think it's worth buying is it an Aura ring? Is that what it's called?
One of these.
Yeah. Are they any good?
Yeah, mate. I live by mine, but they can sometimes be bad as well. Like it's one of those where if you check it first thing in the morning and you've had a bad sleep, it could psychologically set you up for a bad day. So as long as you're not too fixated on it, like I know I am, but it can trigger you in the morning first thing. If you look at it, you've thought you've had a good sleep, and then you see that your REM sleep is less than 20%, and then you're just fuming with yourself. And so just try not to get caught up in it if you do get one, mate.
Yeah, I might buy one, but I feel like this morning, for example, I woke up. I think I went to sleep at 10 o'clock because I was busy last night. Woke up at 4:30, didn't know where I was. I put my alarm on my phone on the other side of my room, so I have to get up to turn it off. Otherwise, I could easily just snooze it. I didn't know where I was, and then as soon as I drove to the gym, I was fine. I was just completely switched on from the start.
Yeah, I feel like if you wake up sometimes when you're not in a deep sleep, though, you can feel like optimal straight away, but then you realize later on you're actually tired. Do you find that?
Yeah, and then when I train legs and I wake up in the middle of the night worried about getting up to train legs.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's like a fine balance, especially when I found that when training first thing in the morning, it's almost like psychologically that you're going to have to get up first thing and train, so you can't really stop because you know what's coming the next day.
Yeah, and to be fair, the assault bike helps in the morning. I feel honestly, all jokes aside, that like doing that really like helps me in the morning, because then I'm like switched on cognitively, because I've been, my heart rate's just gone straight up, come back down straight up. So I feel very switched on after that, and then I feel energetic the whole day then.
It gets the lungs going, doesn't it? It's a tough one.
Exactly.
It's a soul destroyer.
It's good though. It's helped me a lot as well.
Yeah. Oh, I will as well. Yeah. How about everyone else? Has there anyone else got any, like, just with fat loss, any tips that you do that we didn't mention?
Well, I just need to start drinking more water. I keep forgetting to drink water in the days.
Yeah. Yeah, water is, like we said, we touched on that, because it is a lifesaver. I drink a lot of water as well. Like, naturally, I've always drunk a lot, and it does, you go to the toilet a little bit more often, but you know that you're fully hydrated. You're in a more optimal state. I know I use that word a lot, but you are in a more optimal state for performance, both physically and mentally. Yeah, you will just feel better overall. You'll be surprised at how good you feel.
Yeah, might be a bit of a stupid question, but it does like squash count as well? Because I don't like the taste of water.
That's where I go now. I'm terrible for it, honestly. Like I
can't stand the water. Like,
yeah, I like water. Like, I do like water, especially when training. I'll just have water. But yeah, outside the gym, I'll have a lot of squash, to be fair. And I like the taste a bit more. It's literally why. But again, like I said, it comes down to calories. If you factor in those things in, there's no reason why you can't.
oh, it's so happy days.
Yeah, I'd rather, and that's what I was trying to say earlier as well. When you're talking about things being extremely healthy and people trying to obsess over what is healthy and what is not, it's about a trade-off. There's always a trade-off. So what's more important, you getting the water in that you need with a little bit of squash, or you not trying to stick to just clear water all the time, and more than likely you're not going to drink enough. It's better for you to have the little bit of squash with water, even if the squash was negative for you, So it's always a trade-off, always.
Sound.
Yeah, cool, good. Has anyone else got anything to pitch in? How's everyone feeling anyway? Is everyone feeling good so far? Because we're now towards the end of Jan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready for February. I'm ready for it.
I'm March.